today for Lawnfawn and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be creating 3 mini cards using the Let's Toast stamp set. I'm going to be creating 3 different cards, one with Pop-Tarts, one with avocados, and one with the toaster and the bread. And I'm also going to be pulling in the big Scripty Words sentiment set because honestly, whenever I can use this sentiment set, I'm going to use it on a card. And I just thought that these would match really well with a few of like the additional sentiments in the Let's Toast stamp set. I just thought that would be really fun to mix and match, and also I love having different fonts mixed in with like the more basic font, so that's what I really like about it as well. And I wanted just a sort of like a little bit of a different sentiment element on the cards today as well. So I'm going to be starting off with stamping out all of the images I'm going to use. I'm going to need 6 Pop-Tarts, 9 avocados, 3 pieces of bread and a toaster for my projects today, just because I'm going to be doing some grid style cards, and then I just wanted the 3 pieces of bread for the toaster card. So I'm going to start off with Copic colouring in all of my images. I probably could have used watercolour here, it probably would have been 10 times quicker, but I decided to use Copics just because they're what I'm most comfortable with. So I'm starting off with colouring in the inside of the avocados. I'm using YG17, YG23, YG03 and YG01. I have been having lots of fun using 4 Copic markers lately for colouring. I just find you get like a lot more like shading in there and they look a lot more realistic, so I've been really loving using 4 colours. Now I'm moving on to the outside of the avocado, so I'm just using a darker green for that. I'm using G28, YG67, YG63 and YG61, and I just thought this was the perfect combination for the outer bit of the avocado. And then once I finish doing the outsides, I'm going to move on to the pips. So I just did the little pips with some browns. So I'm using some E40 markers for those. I decided to use E47, E44, E42 and E41. I wanted them to be quite a bit darker, so that's why I went for the dark E40 markers. So once I finished colouring those in, those are all of the avocados I'm going to need just for one card, and then I'm going to move on to the toaster card. So for this card, I decided to just use 1 toaster and then the 3 bits of bread sort of like popping out of it. I know that that's not realistic, I just thought that looked better in 3s rather than just having 2. So I'm starting off with colouring in the bread first, so I'm using some E50 markers for that. I just thought it was the most like bready sort of colour. So I'm using E55, E53, E51 and E50. I'm then going on the outside of the bread and I'm using some E70 markers. These honestly may have been a little bit too dark for what I was going for. Maybe I should have used some dark E50s. I just didn't feel like I had enough of them. So that's why I went for E70s, but I'm just using E79, E77, E74 and E71. And then it's time to colour in the toaster. So you can see at the top there I did colour in another toaster, but the BG markers I was using didn't blend together well enough, I don't think, and then I had to use a lot of ink to try and get them to blend together and it just wasn't working. So I decided to alter the toaster and make it striped. I just thought that would be a really fun design, so I decided to just draw in some lines using a Copic multi-liner and it just turned out really nice. I then also used some W markers to create some sort of like shading on the white areas. I'm then colouring in the metal areas of the toaster with some cool greys, so I used C5, C3, C1 and C0 for those. And then that finishes up all of the elements I'll need for the toaster card, and now I'm going to colour in the Pop-Tarts. So I wanted my Pop-Tart card to be pink, so I'm using different pinks for the Pop-Tarts. So I'm using some hot pinks for the first 3, and I sort of like just colour these accordingly how I'm going to have them adhered on my card, just to see if I liked the layout. So I'm using RV19, RV25, RV13 and RV10, and then when I'm using the RV10 marker, I am just making sure to go around the mouth and eyes and not over it, just because I've smudged a few times before, just because obviously it's a really light colour. It doesn't happen with the darker ones, but with the light ones I find that, so I just make sure to avoid that. And then I'm using some sort of like salmony pinks for the other remaining Pop-Tarts. So I'm just using R22, R20, R30 and R00, and again with the R00 I'm just avoiding the eyes and mouth just so it doesn't smudge. And then for the outsides of the Pop-Tarts, I'm using some E30 markers. I'm using E34, E33, E31, and then since I don't have an E30 marker, I used E00, and that seemed to blend out really, really nicely and work quite well. So now that all of the images are stamped and coloured, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut all of these out and then just set them into little stacks for my card. So here they are all coloured in. I think they're really fun, and the reason I stuck to like the same colours on each card is because that's what like my backgrounds and things are going to be. It's all going to be like sort of like the one colour with lots of different shades of that colour, if that makes sense. So now that they're all die cut out, I'm just going to set them off to the side and work on my backgrounds. So I love a good simple background. Obviously, since the colouring took a long time, I did want to keep them really simple. So I'm just going to go and do a really quick and easy watercolour background. So I'm going to take some Distress watercolour paper and I cut that down to 3 1/4 inches by 4 1/2 inches on each piece. And then I'm going to use some Distress Oxide inks for my background. So for the first one, I used some Tattered Rose and Peach Raspberry and just quickly ink blended those two colours onto the panel. For the second one, I'm using Peacock Feathers and Salty Ocean, and for the third one, I'm using Twisted Citron and Lucky Clover. I just did this really, really quick because now I'm going to take a piece of acetate, I'm going to spray it with some water and then lay it over the top of the ink blending, and this is going to blend them together and make for a really simple watercolour background. I've been doing this a lot lately. It just keeps it a lot more controlled and it's really easy to blend the two colours together. This also works for colours that doesn't necessarily blend well together as well. So once I finish going through and doing the 3 backgrounds, I dried them with a heat tool, then I'm flicking on some water with the nozzle out of a spray bottle. I then use some paper towel to pick up the water droplets, and then I also dry that again with a heat tool. Now it's time to arrange the layout of my projects. So for the Pop-Tarts, I just did like a grid sort of design, not straight or anything like that, but sort of just like randomly like angled and things like that. I did 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Then I'm doing 9 avocados on the second card, and then those are going to be adhered like a little bit straighter. And then for the toaster card, I just have the toaster on the bottom with the 3 bits of bread on the top. Now it's time to pull out the big Scripty Words sentiment set, and I'm just going to stamp 3 of the ones that I want to use with the coordinated sentiments onto a piece of white cardstock. I just used some VersaFine Onyx Black ink for that, just to have a really dark sentiment. And then I'm taking the coordinating dies and cutting these out. And I honestly think this is why I love this stamp set so much. It's because of the dies, and I just love having a stamped sentiment with like the stamped images. I think it coordinates really, really well. So I'm going to use the Love Ya on the Pop-Tart card, the Happy on the avocado, and the Congrats on the toaster. And then it'll make a little bit more sense once I stamp the coordinating sentiments as well. Now, because I know the layout of my project, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the rest of the faces. So I knew that some of these images were going to be covered up, so I'm just stamping the top avocados and the bottom avocados with the smiley faces, and also the smiley face on the toaster and the 3 bits of bread as well. I just went ahead and white heat embossed the additional sentiments. So for the Pop-Tart one, it says Love Ya with all my tart. For the avocado, it says Happy, you're the avocado to my toast. And then the toaster card, it says popping up to say congrats. And obviously you can use different sentiments. I just thought these 3 matched really well. I then also pulled out some coordinating colours of pattern paper and cut those pieces down to 3 1/2 inches by 5 inches, and then just adhered them onto a card base as well. So that finished up my 3 mini cards for today. I really like how they turned out. The avocado one is my favourite since I love green, and I just think that was the most fun design, but I really love all of them. They're super cute and the stamp set is so fun. So thank you so much for stopping by today. I really hope you enjoyed and got inspired. All of the supplies will be listed down below and linked over at the blog, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for stopping by today.